something. So loss has a way of bringing out all sorts of emotions, and as we experience the pain and shock of the present, the uncertainty of the future, and unresolved grief and pain of the past. So it just affects your present, past, future. What happens is many of us can't let go of the past. All those memories come in with that person. It could be a father, it could be a mother, it could be a sibling, it could be a son, it could be a, like just a few days back, we lost a small kid, just a few months old, who had COVID. So it is very difficult to. I'm audible, right? Yeah. Hello, I'm audible,
Yes,
right?
yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I had a sound. Anyways, so we lost it. It was so difficult consoling the parents that this few months kid, they were like having a guilt that, okay, we could have brought the child earlier, the child could have been saved, etc. So we need to move from the past to the present and future. It's very easy for us to tell, but it's very difficult to implement in real life. So what's a grieving process? So it's like a change or loss or of an event or situation that occurs. And what is a grief? It is a natural and emotional response. So like I mentioned, it's very natural to grieve. Just yesterday, I had a patient of mine. She's a patient of mine, and her brother passed away in Coimbatore. So she couldn't go there and meet him. The funeral was conducted in Cochin. She is staying a little away, but because of the COVID situation, she could not meet. Even after that, her mother was still grieving. She could not go and meet her because hers was a containment area. So this is a natural emotional response. So the grieving process could not be complete. So she was very, very disturbed. So after the grief process comes something called cope. These are the actions which we take to resolve grief over time. And please you understand that grief is not an event, but rather a process. But in most cases, society views it as an event. So it's that whole grieving process. It could take days, weeks, months for people. But the whole thing is you need to cope and you need to move on. So when this grieving process comes, there are certain people who do certain things. These are called short-term energy relieving behaviors. So these are certain particular go-to behaviors when we experience a loss. And it's usually easier than actually feeling our emotions. So what they do is, instead of feeling these emotions, they just do these actions to numb the pain. Okay, so I'll give some examples. So there was a very close friend of mine who lost his spouse. And till then, he was a very, very, what do you call it? He was an entrepreneur, he was an IT professional, and that was all. But after which we saw a strong change in his personality. He was bungee jumping, he was going on a motorcycle ride in Sahara, then he was paragliding, all extreme sports. So there was a sudden change in him. He was dieting, he was trying to have a six-pack stomach. Okay. Then there was another person who was into social media addiction. He was totally into his Facebook, he was into Instagram, constantly posting things. Then there are people who get into addictions. So what happens is when you get into addictions, it could be drinking, smoking, it could be higher stuff. What happens is it temporarily lowers your anxiety and grief, but it rebounds and comes back with a vengeance. And it's worse than the grieving process and the worse than the anxiety you face. So definitely alcohol or drugs is not the way out. Then there are people who shop, excessive shopping. There are some people who do excessive long hours at work, like I mentioned, drugs. Some people don't eat. Some people binge eat. So it becomes a cycle. That is, when anxiety comes, they eat, especially the processed food. So after which they feel a little high, but again that guilt comes in. Then the anxiety comes in. So they move round and round in circle. Binge watching. I remember when I had issues, I would watch Netflix. I watched it all till 2 o'clock. So what happens is that day is gone, wasted a lot of time, plus next day you feel tired. So binge watching TVs, movies, it's not TV movies now, it's all those series which comes. So that's also a way which many people do. But it's like instead of facing the problem head on, you are running away from it. avoiding social situations, totally withdrawn. I had a friend of mine who had such an issue. He would avoid all social functions. He would not go out. He would not meet with people. He would not socialize. Online video games. This is something which many people do. They, especially the young adults, multiplayer games. It goes into hours and hours and hours. And unfortunately, another problem with this is that instant gratification which you get while playing these games. What happens is if you start doing it repeatedly, life is not so fast. So when you come back to the slow, grinding life, you find it difficult and a lot of frustration, impulsivity, etc. comes. Gambling. There have been many people who get into things like gambling, etc., which land them into huge debts, which further adds to the misery. Other people who get into harmful, dangerous sex, etc., which land them into a lot of legal health issues. So definitely, this is not the way out. So what is the problem with stress? It creates an illusion that we can forget our memories, we can bury our emotions. And short term, they appear to work. But they don't last and they don't help us deal with the emotional issue. So they do nothing to remove the cork. So it's just a temporary measure. It is just a denial. It is just getting away from the problem per se, but you're not problem solving and moving on. You're still stuck there, but you get a temporary relief. So definitely this is not the way out. And the most important thing in grief, when you lose somebody, is you enter into a process called unresolved grief. Because by the time that natural grieving process should have finished, it is interrupted due to these activities. Like 3 months, 6 months is the longest period that people have that grieving process, though you never forget the loved one you lost. But it, like I tell people who are brought to me, like sometimes they are brought to me for telling that the person has died. I am the person to deliver the bad news. So second is when the grieving process is interrupted. So if it's not, if you don't live the grieving process, what happens is it becomes unresolved grief. It can move into anxiety, depression, etc. And it becomes more severe and intense and not lessening with time. And it interferes with the patient's ability to function, person's ability to function normally in daily life. So it's very important that the grieving process has to be resolved at any cost. So this is, I know most of you would have heard about grief and all those things. So that is just an introduction to it. So what can you do at your level? That's what we're going to be talking now. So these are called the ABCs of coping. Coping is how can you bounce back, how can you move on, and how can you lessen the intensity over time. So the first and most important thing is you need to be aware. It is important to be aware of your feelings, the thoughts regarding the change or loss, and how these thoughts and feelings are impacting you on a daily basis. So awareness is key, because many people don't have an awareness on how this is affecting, though they may know bits and pieces. So you need to be knowing that feelings which are coming into you, the thoughts which are coming into you, and how it's impacting you. So if you are aware of how it is affecting you, you've done the first step in the battle. So what can you do? So these are all things which you can use in your life and you can help a friend of yours. So that's the whole intention of my talk today. So are you able to identify by name? So you need to be listing the thoughts, emotions which constantly come into your mind. It could be sadness, irritability, restlessness, denial, guilt, whatever which comes into your mind. Just list it down. Are you aware what times of the day it happens? It could be morning, afternoon, evening. It could be when you're sitting idle. It could be when you're working. It could be when you meet somebody who reminds you of that person. So identify when it happens, in what situations it happens, finding whether it interferes in your daily activities, like your sleep. Is your sleep getting disturbed? Are you getting nightmares? Is it affecting your appetite? Is it affecting your relationship with your friends, classmates, work co-workers, family members, relatives, etc.? So being aware that you're actively grieving is the first step in coping with your grief. So you need to be aware that you are grieving, and you need to be understanding that it is normal to be grieving. The second part of the ABC is B, is balance. because of the grieving process, because of the loss, your life and schedule has been thrown off balance due to the change or loss. And if it's a close person, close family member, it's like a perfect storm. So how can you help to rebalance your thoughts and emotion of sadness and pain with joyful, happy thoughts and feelings? So what happens in such a case is these negative emotions start coming into your mind. It's like your mind is bombarded with these thoughts, all negative thoughts about self, future, person around you, the what do you call it, the past creeping into the present. So we need to be changing. We need to be changing these negative thoughts to positive thoughts. You need to be distracting your mind. You need to be moving on. Okay. So what new or modified routines or activities can be explored to counterbalance? So you need to find some kind of activity which could help you reduce these negative thoughts and move on with life. And you need to be striving to maintain a balance of sadness and joy in your life so that you can cope with the grief. So that is also important. So you just need to start balancing things so that you can reduce the sadness and increase the joy in your life. See our connections. And before losing somebody, so see, like all religions have some kind of grieving process, right? So when somebody dies, you go to their home, you meet them, you talk to them things about the person who died, you talk to them about other things. So when a lot of people come in, you feel good. But unfortunately, again, COVID here has created a huge problem. Here, we are not allowed to go and meet that person legally, which is very correct. And otherwise too, what's happening is you are at risk. So I'll just give you an example. One of my patients died. So unfortunately, all their family members came. They broke all the COVID precautions and protocol. And because a lot of people had come, the wife also got an illness and she died. And what happened was the daughters who could not prevent this, they had guilt and they came to see me for anxiety, depression, etc. So this is it's a vicious cycle. And now because of this COVID restrictions, it's tough. The whole grieving process has been turned upside down. And we are communal beings. We need community connection. So how can we maintain connection, not only with others, but with ourselves? So that's why I always tell, initially, I don't know whether you've noticed, it was all about physical distancing. But I always tell my clients, I always tell people I know, whenever I give talks, it is not physical. It is physical distancing, it is definitely physical distancing, but you should never socially distance yourself. So you can physically distance yourself, but you can always connect with the person by calling that person over phone, messaging, chat, even the video calls, etc. are very much possible. And once COVID gets better, the cases come down, etc., you can meet the person with the proper precautions. But in this situation, it's better not to meet in person because it's high risk behavior. So can we reach out to others using electronic devices, maintain a 6 feet distance and spend time with the other person? That's very important. Are we able to reconnect with ourselves and engage in activities that bring joy, fulfillment like leisure, recreational, spiritual activities, etc.? Can we creatively connect with our support groups, affinity groups, faith groups, etc.? So we need to be connecting not just with others over some methods, but also do certain activities so that we can reconnect with ourselves. Sometimes what happens is we get disjointed from ourselves. So during this time, things like praying, support groups, etc. could help. So along with that, what can we do effectively to manage our stress? So this is something called Face COVID. It's just a short form that I've made. One is to focus on what's in your control. So initially we did the ABC, now we did something called Face COVID. So first thing is focus on what's in your control. Second is A, acknowledge your thoughts and feelings. C is come back to your body, because unfortunately what happens is our mind drifts away. E is engage in things. C is committed action. O is opening up. V is values. I is identify resources. And D is definitely disinfect, distance, and master. So Focus. So that's very important. You need to focus on what's in your control. Because many a times people come and tell that I couldn't do that, I couldn't do this. Sometimes you can't change the environment because see, COVID is a reality that we have to face. It is going to be there with us for some more time. So, and the only solution to that is vaccinating a huge, substantial amount of population. And with our huge population, with our vaccine hesitancy, it's a tough job. But I am hopeful that maybe by the end of this year, we can vaccinate a huge population. So focus on what's in your control. Fear and anxiety are a normal, natural response to challenging situations infused with danger and uncertainty. This is danger, and you really don't know the unknown enemy. So the more we focus on things on what's not in your control, the more hopeless or anxious we are likely to feel. So we can't change the environment. We can't break a lockdown. We can't bring the lost person back. So it would be very useful if you focus on things which are under your control. That is yourself, your emotions, your relations, your social support group, or what can you do if things go out of control, like meeting somebody like a mental health professional who can help you. So there's something called an ACE formula. That is, you need to be acknowledging your thoughts and feelings. You need to be coming back into your body, and you need to start engaging in what you're doing. So about this acknowledging, so you need to be acknowledging your thoughts and feelings. Sometimes you are in a denial. You refuse to accept that you're sad. You refuse to accept that you're lost. You refuse to accept that these negative thoughts are actually affecting you, causing problems, etc. So once you acknowledge your thoughts and feelings, and you understand that there is a problem and which needs to be resolved, half the battle is won. Okay, so sorry. Yeah. So C is come back into your body. So this is a small exercise which I tell many of my clients and people who have these issues. So when such disturbing things happen in your life, you become absent-minded, your mind drifts away. Though you are working, you're studying, you're interacting with somebody, your mind is drifting away. So you can do a small exercise. That is, first, slowly push your feet hard into the floor. Slowly straighten up your back and spine. If sitting, sit upright forward in your chair. Slowly press your fingertips together. Slowly stretch your arms or neck or shrug your shoulders and slowly breathe. So all these things make you aware of your body functions and helps you bring back your mind, which is drifting away, back inside your body. And you start engaging in what you're doing. Just look around the room and notice 5 things you can see. So all these things bring you back to the reality. Start noticing, after noticing, just notice 3 or 4 things that you can hear. Like now in this room, I can see a lot of things. I can hear the AC. I can hear myself speaking. I can hear some cars going outside. So start doing that. Start noticing what you're doing now. Start focusing on that. And end the exercise by giving your full attention to the task and activity at hand. So basically what I was telling was something called mindfulness, which is an emerging field which everybody and anybody can do. When you're doing something, your whole mind goes into that. You leave the past, you leave the future, you live in the present. So when you live in the present, when you acknowledge what's happening, a lot of change can happen. Committed action. C stands for committed action. What are the simple ways to look after yourself? Those whom you live with, those you can realistically help. So when you are facing a loss, you definitely need to look after yourself. There are many people who land into trouble, who are into many issues, etc., and who have a lot of issues. So unless you look after yourself, you can't look after others. And you need to help those whom you live with and whom you can realistically help. So what kind, caring, supportive deeds can you do? So first look after yourself, then try to help people around, and then try to help people in other areas. Can you say some kind words to someone in distress? So After helping yourself and after helping somebody at home, you can always try to help others. So this could reduce your distress. So definitely you cannot go there in person, but just a phone call or just a text message or expressing your heartfelt condolences. These create a huge impact. So it may be just a message, but that person understands that, okay, there is somebody for me who is there to help me if something happens to me too. Can you help someone with a task? Because sometimes because of COVID, etc., there are many people who are stuck at home, quarantined, they can't move out, they are having COVID, etc. So just a small, like get some grocery, cook a meal, hold someone's hands, I wouldn't suggest now, or even just go and help that, go out and help them, etc. Meeting in person, I wouldn't advise now. And can you comfort someone who's sick, etc. So as of now, meeting in person, I wouldn't advise, but all you can do through chat, etc., chat, video chat, etc. Opening up. This is very important. I tell many of my clients that when you meet somebody, when you talk to somebody, 50% of your problems come out. Especially in the young people, what I find is they open up, never happens, especially to their parents, especially to their relatives, because they can't. Sometimes they open up to their friends who are of the same age, same mental development, and that could land up into trouble. So it's always better to open up with a family member who can always help you get over these issues. So in many of these cases, when you open up, share your sorrow, when you discuss things, it gets better. So values. What do you want to stand for in face of this crisis? What kind of person do you want to be? 1 second, I have a call. It's around 10 times I call. I'll just get back to you. 1 second.
Sure.
Hello. Hello. No. It's 10 times. That's right. Sorry. Hello. ഞാനിപ്പോ ഒരു ടോക്കിന്റെ ഇടയിലാണ്, കുറച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞ് വിളിക്കും കേട്ടോ. അതെ, അപ്പൊ അല്ല, ഞാനിപ്പോ ഒരു ടോക്കിന്റെ ഇടയിലാണ്, ഞാനൊരു ടോക്ക് കൊടുത്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്, നിങ്ങളുടെ ഫോൺ ഇങ്ങനെ അടച്ചു. അങ്ങനെയാണ് കൂടുതൽ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടാണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മൾ അഡ്മിറ്റ് ഓക്കെ, ഹോസ്പിറ്റലിൽ വന്നോളൂ കേട്ടോ, അഡ്മിറ്റ് ആണ്. അല്ല, കാഷ്വാലിറ്റിയിൽ വന്ന് അഡ്മിറ്റ് ആവുള്ളൂ. ഓക്കെ, പേഷ്യന്റിന് നിങ്ങളുടെ കൂടെ ആരെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടായിട്ട് വരും കേട്ടോ. ഓക്കെ, അഡ്മിറ്റ് ആവുന്നു കേട്ടോ. ശരി. ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ, ശരി. ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ ഓക്കെ. Yeah, sorry, it was an important call. A person was calling me for the last 10 times. That's why.
No worries, sir. So if you want to take that call, 5 minutes break.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. It's okay. So she was calling 10 times. So that's why.
Okay. That's okay.
Sorry.
No,
sorry. Okay.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah. So next is the values. What do you stand for in face of this crisis? Because sometimes we may have to compromise, etc. What sort of person do you want to be as you go through this? How do you want to treat yourself and others? What can you say to others that will enable you to look back the coming years? So we need to be thinking about our values, which will help us get through this process. Identify resources. This is very important because, like in that COVID times, when it started itself, many of us, especially the doctors who were on the front line, because we were always sure there was no vaccine then, there was no medicine then, there was nothing then. Even the mask was like how useful it would be, we didn't know. But we were always wearing a mask. So we were always thinking about what can we do then? If something happens to us, what can we do, etc. So you need to be identifying resources for help, assistance, support, and advice. So you need to have a social support system who can help you. It could be friends, it could be relatives, it could be people you know, and it could be somebody like a mental health professional who can help you. So like the call I took, I always give my patients my number, but like when it's a talk, it gets a little difficult because I tell them in case of an emergency, you can call me. So that's why she called me. So that is why I had to take it, because it is the 10th call that she gave. So if you can identify resources or people who can help you, it makes a huge difference. So if you, and you need to be finding a trustworthy information. So it's just not people resources, it can be online resources, etc. Because there's a overload of information coming. Every day things are changing and people are confused. Because even now there is vaccine hesitancy, etc. People are reluctant to take it because of the information overload. So you should have reliable information. So last and not the least, you need to disinfect and you need to distance physically. You need to disinfect your hands regularly. You should practice social distancing. Physical distancing does not mean cutting off emotionally, and you need to be using masks. So these are certain things which you can do at your level. But if things go out of control and it starts affecting your functioning, you need to be seeing somebody like a psychiatrist, a qualified mental health professional who can help you. So this is a very important thing, because many a times what happens is people come to us only when there is a crisis. So, and it gets beyond their control. So once you try to resolve grief on your own, you try these things which I told you. These are things to preempt anxiety, depression, etc. But if it starts increasing in frequency and intensity, if it uh, if it starts affecting your relationship with others, if it starts affecting your work, if it starts affecting your studies, you need to be seeing somebody like a psychiatrist who can help you. So this is very important, because, and I'll be moving on to some certain conditions where grief, if not resolved, can lead to something else. It's called depression, which you would have all heard. So what are the features of depression? It's like things like anxiety, like excessive low mood, excessively being worried, having lack of happiness, being amotivated, negative thoughts coming to you about self, future, people around you, magnifying your problems, difficulty concentrating, withdrawn from others. Okay, so these are some symptoms of depression. If it's there for more than 2 weeks, please understand that this grief process is not being resolved. You're moving into depression, which is something severe. It could lead to suicidal thoughts. It could lead to a host of problems. So depression is just not psychological symptoms. It can come with as multiple non-specific physical symptoms. Like it could be a headache which is not being resolved. It could be your heart pounding, palpitations. It could be breathlessness. It could be a weight on your chest. It could be a stomach discomfort, like a butterflies in your stomach. It could be multiple pains and aches. It could be what do you call it? A heat feel, a cold feel. So multiple non-specific, unresolved physical symptoms. You definitely need to rule out a physical complaint, but if it's not there, it's an issue. So one thing which unresolved grief can lead to is something called depression. Other thing is something called generalized anxiety. You're anxious from morning till night. Then another thing is something called panic attack. That is like a panic attack is all of a sudden, it just comes out of the blue. Your heart starts pounding. You feel breathless. You start losing control. That unexpected anxiety of something happening to you happens. And all those thoughts about that person you lost come and flood you. You feel as if you could have done better. You feel as if you could die, etc. So that fear of impending doom, etc. happens. So if grief is not resolved, it can lead to things like depression, panic attacks. It can lead to severe, like I have many patients who have insomnia, that is difficulty sleeping. Some people can't sleep when they at the usual times. They have disturbed sleep. They start getting up early. So everything goes for a toss. Some people have things like eating disorders. They eat too much, binge eating. Some people have decreased appetite. So unresolved grief can affect you physically, mentally, psychologically, family-wise, work-wise, education-wise. So it's holistically affecting you. So it's very important that it has to be resolved. Initially, try it on your own. If not, it takes help of a social support system, a friend, a relative. Just try to open up with them. Try to move on. But if it is not solved, if it is not solved, you need to seek help of somebody like a psychiatrist who can help you. If it is a mild problem, There are things like cognitive behavior therapy, where we try to change these negative thoughts to positive thoughts. We help you distract your mind away, etc. So that's fine. But if it's moderate to severe, it is increasing in frequency and intensity, we give medication. See, when you talk about psychiatric medications, everybody has a feeling that these are brain numbing medicines, it is mind numbing medicines, it is to make you tired, sleep. No, these are lifestyle compatible medications, functionality enhancing medications. It's not functionality damaging medications. What these medications do is, especially when anxiety, depression is, it's due to some neurochemical changes in your brain. The medication helps to reduce the frequency and intensity of these target symptoms of anxiety, depression. Plus, it helps you sleep at night and be active in the morning. That's something which I always underline. It is to make you functional. So a loss of a person is like we had a bridge in Cochin called Palarivattam Bridge. So it was in great despair, and it was almost going to get fallen down. So then it was repaired recently. So I always tell my patients, it's like an old bridge which is going to fall down, or a bridge which is going to fall down. So the bridge can fall down in multiple reasons. One, if the girders are weak, the support is weak. So that is your neurochemical predisposition to develop a psychological problem. And the stress in life, it could be the loss of a loved one. That is like a overloaded truck going over this bridge. So the bridge may already, the girders may be already weak. That is, you're genetically predisposed to it. Plus, when you have a life, even like a loss of a loved one, the whole thing collapses. So when that happens, you may need medication plus behavioral management. And one more thing is, what happens is there are many people who come over, talk to me, take my medications, take it for a week or two, they get better, but they just stop it immediately because they got better. But what I tell them is, see, it's just not about stopping this current episode from going up, but also seeing that this is not repeated again. It's about not having follow-up episodes or relapses. It's to get better. So please follow the recommendations of your treating doctor and take it as long as is needed. Usually for a single episode, it's just for 6 months to a year. And we slowly reduce and taper it. And initially the medications work, then the behavioral management kicks in. And so the medications are for short-term to medium term. And once the behavioral management with the long-term effects kick in, we slowly reduce the medicines depending upon your improvement, and finally stop it and move to the behavioral management. And after a particular point, we slowly move away and allow you to take care of yourself. Okay, so I think I've come to the very last of my slides. And though every time I'm given 1 hour, what I do is I stop after 30 to 40 minutes, because the normal attention span of a person is 30 to 40 minutes. So beyond that, once we go, what happens is it's just a waste of time. Everybody's mind hovers away. So thank you again for calling me. I hope I've been able to shed some light to the problems. And if you have any doubts, any comments, anything which you have a doubt on, you can always ask me or put it into the chat. And if you have reluctant to ask, which I hope it's not, it's anything is okay. There is nothing wrong, right, or anything. You can always ask me. You can always contact me in this number. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was a very informative session. With your examples of your patients, I'm sure the students were able to relate. Any questions, anybody? Please, you can put it in the chat. And, if you don't want to unmute, you can unmute as well and ask. Anybody? Any queries?
Anything. It's okay. Okay, so somebody's asked.
Yes, if a person who lost her father, how we can apply CBT?
Yeah, so see, CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, is something to be done by a trained mental health professional. So it's a little difficult for a lay person to do it. So the things which I mentioned, you can always try opening up with the person, talking to that person, etc. But if it is not resolved, CBT is to be done by a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist who's trained in CBT. So it has to be done in the process. So there are things like writing a behavior diary, getting a chart of the emotions which come into your mind, challenging with those emotions, etc. What do you call distracting your mind? There are multiple steps in it. It's not a one-day process, but it's a series of sessions. But for the milder cases, CBT works. For the moderate to severe cases, you may need medications to reduce the symptoms by 50% and then do CBT, which further improves. So it's like, say, if you do CBT alone, you may get 20% improvement. If you do medication alone, you may get 50% improvement. But if you combine CBT with medication, you may get 80 to 90%. So when you combine both, the effect is actually not additive, it's more super additive. So it's best that medications and CBT is combined for the moderate to severe cases. And one more thing, grieving is a natural, normal process. If you grieve till 6 months, it's okay. But if it's increasing in severity, frequency, it's not coming down, it's affecting your areas of functioning, you need to be seeking the help of a qualified mental health professional.
Okay. Anybody else? Any question?
Okay, thank you, sir. I got your point regarding CBT because I'm taking a session with my child. She is in 10th standard basically, and she lost her father due to COVID. So, day after tomorrow, it is going to be a first session for me, and their parents, their cousins saying that she is throwing tantrums nowadays and she is not putting attention. I can understand because it's not been a long time. So I just want to understand how we can proceed the session. CBT will do later on because I have done I'm also from psychology background. I will try to put up like ABC therapy and in CBT, but how I can start conversation, how I'll take the initiative to talk because she is not going to talk anyone, and if she'll come to know that other counselor is coming to talk her, I don't know how she's going to behave. So just the first step to initiate, it would be really grateful.
So the thing is, see, sometimes people are very reluctant to talk about their loss. That's perfectly normal, natural. So it's always better to start with something neutral, a neutral topic, and then move on to the topic proper. And most importantly, instead of being an active participant, be an active listener. Listen to the person. They may know they don't want to talk about the loss, but they want to talk about something else. But finally, we can get to the root cause of the problem and asking the person to, like, sometimes people are reluctant to tell. So what I tell them is write a behavior diary. So all those things which they want, the emotions which are being emoted, they come to us. You can get it indirectly through the behavior diary. So just tell them, like, every day, 2 minutes, just think about your day. What were the situations which made you sad, irritated, angry? How did you react to it? Was it helping or worsening the situations? So you get to know what's happening in their mind and you get to know where to start from, because that start is very difficult. And once you have that rapport and that connect with that person, it's easier. And when it's a young adult who's lost somebody, it is difficult, I understand, but there's no like fixed formula for it. There's no tailor-made thing. So you have to adjust, you have to be flexible, you may have to go to their level, etc. And for younger children, what we do is there's something called a 3-wish test. I think you must have heard of it. If it's a young child, the child refuses to tell anything, we tell, okay, see, God comes in front of you. What would you wish for? 3 wishes. So it's for smaller children, not a 10th standard student. But so children, they're very reluctant to talk to you. They have nothing to tell. So when you tell, like, make it into a story, when you make it into wish, etc., these unconscious things come out and you have something to start from. So when you start from there and you win the rapport of the person, you can definitely move on. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any queries? Please do fill in the feedback form. We'll be putting the feedback form in the chat box. Please do fill it in so that we can know, not only for our speaker, but also for us on which all topics we should get in future. So, yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So it's actually not related to the session, but I would like to ask you a question. Like, I've been taking antidepressants for like 2 months,
Okay.
and because of the current situation, like for 5 days, I'm not like because I couldn't purchase the medicines, I'm not able to take the medicines. So
Okay.
would that affect it anything? Would there be a problem?
Yeah. So the first and foremost thing, it's just like any other illness. Antidepressant is perfectly okay if a doctor has prescribed for you, but you have to remember something. If you take the antidepressant, you'll get better, but you shouldn't be missing medication. If it's past due date, please do contact the doctor. Um, you need to be meeting the doctor, or you need to be at least calling him and asking him or her what to be doing. And if you can't, if the shops are closed, etc., online, all these things are available now. Even now, I do online consults, so these are all possible now. So there's no absolutely no thing about stopping the medicines. And it's not like a paracetamol. These medicines take time to work. You pop in a paracetamol, your fever comes down. Okay, but here it's a steady state concentration. That is, you take it continuously, it builds in your blood, it builds in your brain, and it works. So when you suddenly stop it, you can have you shouldn't be stopping it, and the effect lessens, and you could be landing into issues. So it is better that you definitely get back to your treating doctor, take his or her suggestion on what to be doing, and please do continue it. It will help you.
Like, I didn't actively stop the medicines on my own. I was doing a teleconsultation, but because I've actually not opened up to my family about the issue, so I was wondering, like, since I haven't taken it for 5 days, would there be an issue? Like,
Yeah,
would
there'll
it
be
be
an
a
issue. You should be getting back to your doctor immediately, and you should be
okay?
assuming the medication as soon as possible.
Okay,
From
sir.
yeah,
Sure. Thank you, doctor.
okay.
Anybody else? Any queries, please?
See, when I give real-time talks, what happens is once I leave the room, everybody comes over and asks questions. But unfortunately, here that is not possible. One. Second thing is, many people mail me or WhatsApp me and ask me. I think I've given my details. You can do that, but it's always better that you ask now. I'm available.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Yeah. I wanted to ask two questions.
Yes.
What to tell the people? What to tell and what not to tell for
Okay.
grieving people?
Okay.
And another one is what is the difference between the move on and move forward in grief?
Okay, fine. So the first thing is, see, even I have faced this problem when I go to a grieving person, when I go to a, because initially I was very reluctant. When I was a small kid, we never had to go because children were not allowed to go for grieving to houses where the cremation or the grieving people would be there. But after a particular point now that I've become an adult, much more than adult, but I have to be going. Friends, family, relatives. There have been multiple instances where we are forced to go, and we really don't know what to tell. So just your presence alone counts. Sometimes, like I'm talking about pre-COVID era, okay, where you just go there, stand with the person, hold the hands, or just your emotion the emotion that you give them, that we are there for you. Whatever happens, you can always count on us. But in this present COVID era, you cannot be physically there. So you can always send a heartfelt condolences, a message that day. You may not receive any message in reply, but the person would have noticed it, or maybe would not have noticed it. After which you can follow up with a call, etc. So because after a particular point, there's nobody there at home, so they'll be feeling lonely, etc. There you can give a call, or if they're more comfortable with, you can do a video call. It all depends upon the person, their level, your rapport with that person, their comfortable feeling, etc. You shouldn't be overdoing it, but not doing at all too is not the right way. Second is about that moving on thing. See, it's very easy to tell. Like many people, what they tell is once somebody dies, you need to be taking away the things away, keeping things away, etc. But some people overdo it. They keep pictures, etc., to remember, or they keep all their things away. But it's always a middle path would be better. But we need to be moving on. And what I tell all my clients is, see, time is the only thing which helps you. If it's excessive, my medication is only going to hasten the process or fasten the process. But I cannot be time which lessens the blow. It never removes the blow. You will never forget the loss of a loved one ever. It's difficult. But time lessens the blow. So you can move on. The faster you do, the better. But it all depends upon your connect with the person, your relation with the person, etc. But ultimately, we humans are very resilient. We bounce back. See, COVID was something which we never knew about. But even now, we are moving on with like this talk would never have been possible if we had all got bogged down. But this happened. And now, before I used to give talks to people in Cochin. Now I'm giving to people in all over Kerala, all over India. And actually next week, I'm giving a talk on parenting for people in Dubai. I used to go there and give talks. Now what they're telling is a Zoom. It's just that I'll have to do it at 9 p.m. because 7 p.m. is a comfortable time for them. So we are very resilient people. We will all bounce back. But there's a small population who are a little prone to such things, who are anxiety prone, anxious personality, who have the genes or have a family history of such issues. They are more prone to develop depression, etc. They may need help, hand holding, they may need medication, but even then they can overcome it and we can all bounce back.
Any other questions?
See, again, there is nothing wrong or right. You can ask anything. It's okay.
You can put it in chat if you don't want to unmute your mic. How to work with elderly patient post-COVID treatment? Okay. Mindfulness therapy would be beneficial or CBT?
Okay, fine. So, see, this is a very general question. See, elderly patient with COVID, post-COVID, it's a host of symptoms. Physical symptoms itself is like from head to foot. But usually what we find is some people tell about a symptom called brain fog. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but they just can't remember anything. Just today I had a patient. He was not an old patient, but he was a young patient. She could not remember things properly. She could not think properly. Her mind would drift away. Things she wanted to tell, she could not express, etc. So this mindfulness, CBT, what we do is, it depends upon the person's symptoms. It could be anxiety symptoms. It could be fear symptoms. It could be anger symptoms. It could be sleep symptoms. So based on what it is, it works. Mindfulness works for a lot of things. CBT works for a lot of things. So CBT works for things like anxiety, depression. Mindfulness works for most of the things. And it all depends upon the comorbidities, etc. So we can't just tell that, okay, this is a blanket treatment for this, but it depends upon the target symptoms you're targeting of the person.
Sir, a very close person has been went away. Should we dump all souvenirs, memories of past?
Yeah, so this is again some people overdo it by throwing everything away and giving it away. Some people, they create a memorial of that. Okay, so what I always advise is a middle path where you can always keep these things from the public space, from your public view, and you can keep it there. Because sometimes what happens is you give everything away. 6 months down the line, you feel you want to see it, you can't. So that guilt comes. Okay, so but creating a memorial, like there are people who create a big memorial, they do a lot of things. See, it varies from person to person, etc. Your way of coping would be different from mine, and mine would be different from some other person's. So it's a different thing. So a middle path would be okay. It would be always better that you keep the things away in a container or something, or keep it locked away. and maybe 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line, you want to see it, you can see it. But it would be always better if you keep things away and not overdo it. Then somebody is written to overcome anxiety, depression. Yeah, I think I've explained that. Yeah. Out of reach, away from it. Yes. Yeah.
Any more questions, anybody?
Sir, this time the cultural way of expressing grief
Yeah.
and community is not also coming. So
Yes.
even the even the people are some or other way facing so many
Yes.
psychological problems, means they are not able to express. So
Yes.
and they're not aware of they are not open up to any
Yes.
psychological help. So
Yes.
in that case, how we can help them, how we can create an awareness, because
Yes.
any mental health professional, we can understand the need of the psychological support or any kind of support. But
Yeah.
these people, they deny that, okay, it's okay, fine. But a little bit I deal with a patient who is said that, please tell me that my wife will come back. At least
Okay.
I can get that person. At least that person will be staying with me as a ghost, but you can say that
Okay.
she will come back. So it's very difficult to make him accept that. It's the
Yeah.
person is no more is coming. So
Yeah.
the cultural way of addressing the grief, and the community is also not coming. So in this case, it's how we have to deal with it.
Yeah. So I've told you, COVID has like, see, normal grief itself is very difficult. Pre-COVID grief managing itself is a difficult process. In COVID times, it has become a very difficult thing. And there are stages of grief. I didn't explain that because I didn't want to get into technical stuff. So see, there are stages. The first stage of grief is called denial, in which thing which you explained, that no, that person is still with me. In that period, what we believe is it is wrong. The patient has not died. Patient is still with me. We start hearing that person. We start feeling that person is just beside us. That's a normal thing. But if it continues, there's a patient of mine. After 6 months, also she used to hear her son, whom she was always with. So that's called an auditory hallucination, and that's a cause of concern. So we need to break out of this denial. So that there are multiple stages. We need to get that person from that denial to the next phase, etc. So they can come out of this vicious cycle that they go out of. And we cannot go in person, but we can always, like I mentioned, message, a call, a video call, or a group call, etc. We can all do, so that we can show them that we are always there to help you, and you can always call them to help via grocery or in any way to get things done, things moving. If they cannot leave the house, that we are always there. So a small show of support itself suffices, but denial breaking is very important. Okay, so somebody's asked, gone through a traumatic incident, loss of person. Okay. Okay, so this 1 minute, can I just take a call? It's from the hospital casualty. 1 second, just hello. Parayum. Parayum. Patient 2 weeks, same old prescription. 2 weeks. Okay. Sorry, there's a call from the. Okay, yeah. So if somebody has gone through a traumatic loss of person in the past and years later they're extremely sensitive to anything related to the incident, is it because they haven't grieved properly? Yes, it could be. So just like I said, after 6 months, if it still persists in intensity and frequency, it is a cause of concern. So even after years, you just can't forget the person. You will remember, that's normal. But if it is excessive, it is a cause of concern and it needs to be solved. So taking expert help would be great.
Any more questions, anybody? Okay. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session. Thank you so much. I'm sure all those who have gone through a traumatic experience or who know friends who have gone through it, I'm sure at least, this, your session would help them cope, help them handle, because it might give some solace to grief. So like you said, it will take time, but it will give them some solace. I hope so. So thank you, sir. It was a wonderful session, and thank you for patiently answering all the queries. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Pleasure's mine.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks a lot. Next week we have Land Your Dream Job. So with respect to placements and resumes. So yes, please, if anybody is interested, please do tell your friends and you can register. Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful weekend. Thank you. Yes, happy weekend to you too, Karen.